It is not often that a small bank puts up a portion of its lending portfolio for sale in Pakistan. It is even rarer for that to happen and for it to matter to the broader banking industry's competitive dynamics. But that is exactly what is happening with the announcement that Silkbank is selling its consumer lending portfolio, and that the leading contenders, at least at the moment, are Habib Bank Limited and Bank Alfalah. The bank is one of Pakistan's smallest banks, but it plays an outsized role in the consumer lending space, making its spin-off of that portfolio a coveted asset among Pakistan's bigger banks, and potentially a big deal for the country's e-commerce industry. But who will win the race between these two banks to buy Silkbank's consumer lending business? Mariam Ali investigates. As of the close of 2019, the consumer lending portfolio at the bank stood at 23 billion rupees, or a minor 2.6% of the industry's total consumer lending. But it matters for two reasons. First, that the portfolio consists of a high-margin credit card business that has a relatively low default rate. And the second being that Silkbank has consistently been one of the leading consumer-facing lending banks in Pakistan. How did Silkbank get into such a coveted position? It starts with the founder, current Finance Minister Tarin. Now a legend in the world of Pakistani finance, Tarin is a former Citibank veteran, starting his career there in 1975, only leaving 22 years later in 1997. He spent the remainder of the 20th century fixing HPL for the government of Pakistan, allowing it to be privatized for a profit. Then, as CEO of Union Bank, Tarin used every ounce of Citibank's skills to make Union Bank into a consumer banking powerhouse, turning it into an attractive asset for Standard Chartered Bank, which bought Union Bank in 2005 for 29.4 billion rupees, or $490 million. In short, Tarin knows consumer finance in Pakistan probably better than anybody. So when he took over Silkbank, it was always going to be a key part of his strategy. After these three major successes, Tarin managed to put together that consortium, led by Japanese investment banking giant Nomura, to acquire Saudi Bark Bank. Timing, however, was not on Tarin's side. First came the 2008 financial crisis, which did not help. But more importantly, barely 6 months after starting the venture, Tarin was appointed finance minister by President Zardari. Tarin was not able to take charge of his own bank and left his brother Azmat Tarin as CEO, leaving backers unhappy to not have Tarin at the helm. Silkbank has had its fair share of challenges. What is undeniable, however, is the bank's prowess in consumer lending. But it has always insisted on being innovative and seemed quite set on maintaining its edge in consumer banking despite the bank's other difficulties. For instance, in the annual report of 2019, the bank said that it wanted to reduce the real estate portfolio, close loss-making branches, and increase consumer loans in order to improve CAR. This philosophy is near revolutionary because, and we cannot stress this enough, it is unheard of for Pakistani banks to be this interested in their consumer lending business. And here's what makes it even more interesting. Silkbank has managed to contain its bad loans in the consumer lending space to a relatively low level at just 6.1%. But it gets better. Silkbank's consumer lending portfolio has a lower default rate than its overall lending portfolio. And this has been true for almost the entirety of the bank's history, and most of the time since Tarin took over the bank. This is truly extraordinary because it means the bank is better at lending to Pakistani consumers than it is at lending to Pakistani businesses, which makes the potential sale of its darling segment all the more interesting. The first contender is HPL, which already has a well-developed consumer banking segment, which is the second largest one in the industry, worth 106 billion rupees. The next contender is Bank Alfalah, which is narrowly in fourth place in terms of consumer lending, with a 67 billion rupee portfolio. Incidentally, Bank Alfalah and HPL are also two of the leading banks in the merchant acquisition business, meaning they give out credit cards, processing machines to merchants and process their payments for them, a highly lucrative and rapidly growing business in Pakistan. If they were to begin competing in the card insurance business, in addition to their already cutthroat competition in the card processing business, that could mean good things for both businesses and consumers that rely on credit and debit card payments.